Hi there, I'm a composer, and as an unelected representative of my field, I would like to offer you some suggestions on how you might approach modern and contemporary music if you're not already familiar with it. So I have a lot of friends, and I'm constantly meeting people who don't know this music very well, if at all, and I've noticed that very often there's a certain degree of apprehension. People genuinely don't know how to approach it, and in some cases they're actually somewhat reticent to do so for all sorts of reasons. So I'd like to go through this, just offer a few points. So here they are. The first one is, assume that music is vitally important to your personal survival. Okay, so we have musical instruments conserved in museums that are as old as 40,000 years, and we know that music exists in every single civilization, every culture around the world, and this has always been the case. So it is safe to assume that humanity would not have invested so much time in something if it did not have some extraordinary intrinsic value. Okay, because life is hard enough as it is. We're not going to spend hundreds and thousands of hours of our lifetimes engaging with something unless there's a very good reason for it. So on a certain level, you really can't survive without music. This is absolutely, I think, absolutely true. Okay, second point. You need to cultivate an interest in the music of your own time. There's absolutely no particular reason I can think of why someone alive today would be more interested in something that happened 200 years ago in the sort of distant past than something that's happening today. So I would think that logically, the music of today would command people's most urgent attention. It absolutely should. That's not to say you shouldn't know about the music of the past, but I think that the first priority has got to be given to things that are happening today. You would think that it would be incumbent on you to have some general degree of familiarity with the sort of important cultural artifacts of the time. And this is assuredly one of them. So don't be a rube, cultivate an interest in contemporary music. Third point, assume low returns at first. Okay, so this is the case with me. It's the case with people who have never heard contemporary music in their lives. It doesn't matter. When I hear a piece for the first time, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen. And I don't know if it's going to be a good piece, a bad piece, if I'm going to like it, if I'm not going to like it. I don't know what style it's going to be if I don't know the composer already. And so generally speaking, the best you can hope for when you're approaching something completely unfamiliar is that you're going to achieve a sort of vague sense of its surface qualities. And so that's about it. And I would be surprised if you got too much more out of it the first time around. And for that matter, it might take 3 or 4 listenings until you start to get more out of it than that. So, you know, the piece of music has an almost limitless potential to signify. That's one of the amazing things about music. So a single piece by Mozart could generate hundreds of years of commentary. I mean, when you think about it, it's an amazing thing, and people can listen to it hundreds of times and not get bored of it. So that gives you a sense of just how deep and how vast a single work of music can be. So if you're hearing it for the first time, you know, you're lucky if you just sort of barely scratch the surface in terms of what that piece is. So be open-minded about it and give it a few listens, because you're not going to get all that much out of it the first time around, and that is completely fine. The next point is, don't expect it to be effortless, because frankly it's not. And one of the most insidious lies perpetrated by the advertising and marketing campaigns of orchestras and contemporary music ensembles is that modern and contemporary music is a blast, it's fun, it's easy. It's not that simple. The truth of the matter is, like anything, if you want to develop a certain degree of familiarity with it to the point where you can appreciate it and enjoy it, it takes a bit of time, and it takes a bit of effort in terms of, you know, being willing to listen to things more than once, being willing to listen to a range of things. There's a cartoon that I'd like to show you that I really like, that I think illustrates this point quite well. And again, it doesn't have to take hundreds of hours of your time, but you know, one thing you could consider doing is just setting aside an hour a week and listening only in that time to things that you've never heard of before. And even just doing that, you will immeasurably broaden your musical culture. if you're hearing a piece for the first time, take 10 minutes to read about the composer. Take 10 minutes to read the program note, or go on Wikipedia or something. And just something as simple as that could make the difference between, feeling like this is the worst experience you've ever had, and it's like you're being given voluntary brain surgery, and actually really enjoying yourself. So just take a tiny bit of time and put a bit of effort in, and you'll get way more out of it. Okay, next, suspend judgment for as long as possible. Okay, so it's often happened to me that I would go to a concert, particularly in my student years, and I would sort of arrogantly proclaim that was the absolute worst piece of music ever written, and it is just an abomination on every level, etc., etc., etc. And then, for one reason or another, 2 weeks later or a month later, I'll encounter the piece again, and I'll be like, oh, it's not that bad. Actually, it's quite a good piece. So, and then be kind of embarrassed about it. So the truth is, it's very difficult to formulate a real opinion about something that you've only just discovered and you're not particularly familiar with. So assume that the piece has some value, and that if you expose yourself to it enough, you'll eventually get to that, even if you don't necessarily get it right away. Okay. Approach it as you would an adventure, because ultimately that's what it is. You're going to have the amazing experience of going into a concert hall and hearing something where you have absolutely no idea what it's going to be like. You don't know how it's going to start, how it's going to end. You don't know what's going to happen in between, what sort of path the composer is going to take you on. You don't know what the style is. It could be anything. I mean, contemporary music is actually extraordinarily vast and diverse. I mean, in terms of the different styles that are being practiced today, you have absolutely everything from sort of neo-romantic music, minimalist music, sort of the most hardcore experimental music, and then you have things that take their inspiration from rock and all sorts of things. I mean, it's an extremely diverse field. So you don't know what it's going to be. And the odds are it's going to be something that you are not familiar with. So approach it that way. Assume that you don't know anything about it. Assume that it's going to be a new experience, and try to see the adventure in that. Okay, so here's the next point. Assume that there's something to be gotten out of it. Now, I've noticed that if you go to, for example, an exhibit of abstract expressionist paintings, one of these blockbuster shows that's always being put on at the Museum of Modern Art in New York or whatever, you'll notice that there is a kind of frenzy. There's extremely high attendance rates to these kinds of things. You get hundreds of thousands of people sometimes going out to these shows. And if you look at what the equivalent to that might be in terms of musical expression, there is a barrier somehow to that kind of level of participation. And I think that the simple reason for that, it's got nothing to do with the content of the work. It's simply that if you go to an art show and you don't like a painting, you can just walk past it. You don't have to stand in front of it for longer than you want to. Whereas with a piece of music, if it's 20 minutes long, you pretty much have to sit there for 20 minutes. And what I would say is that if you are having that experience, you're listening to a piece, you don't like it that much, it's not a big deal, because you can get something out of it anyway, even if you don't like it. I'm actually fascinated by music I don't like, because it broadens my perspectives, and it sharpens my critical faculties, and it makes me think harder about why it is I like certain things and why it is I don't like certain things, and is there actually a valid reason for that? Is it just a prejudice of mine? Is it just something that I'm not able to get in the piece itself? And maybe with repeated listenings, I might actually be able to access something of tremendous value that I don't necessarily see the first time around. And when you have that experience multiple times, it's incredibly enriching. Okay, so the final point, and this is a crucial point: assume that the composer is not a moron. Right, so the thing about being a composer is that it's an absolutely brutal field, and it takes years and years and years of constant hard work in order to get to a point where your work is performed publicly and professionally. And so you should assume that if a composer has gotten to that stage, then they've already been through an extremely difficult and lengthy process of sort of trial by fire, so to speak. So keep that in mind, and assume that they have something to say, and that they've spent years formulating what they have to say, and that they're not morons and they're not charlatans. Now, okay, so composers are a subspecies of the human race. So statistically, it's true, some of them are morons. And it's also true that statistically, some of them are absolute brilliant geniuses. And so assume that the composer in question has something of value to give to you, and try to cultivate a sense of receptivity so that there is a minimum of barriers between what they are trying to communicate and your ability to receive it. That's it for now. Thanks for listening.